So in this video, I wanted to discuss NFL's most legendary stadium, Lambeau Field. Breaking ground all the way back in 1956, it has been renovated quite a few times. I wanted to talk about what is its future, when was it last renovated, and what am I expecting when it comes to what the Packers are going to do. Now, the first thing to note, this is really a community-based stadium. It's located in a small city right next to a neighborhood. So when it comes to renovations and really changing Lambeau Field, I don't see that very likely. Let's take a look. You can see they did really kind of change it back in 2012 when it added an upper deck to its one end zone, the south end zone expansion, which added about 7,000 seats, and this is a really good job. And this type of an expansion reminds me of what the Cubs have done with Wrigley Field and kind of modernizing it, changing all of their outfield seating, adding the two scoreboards out in the outfield. Same thing with the Boston Red Sox in Fenway Park. It's like these three stadiums are kind of similar in the sense they're all legendary, and we're all wondering, are these things ever going to get replaced, or are they just going to keep renovating them? Of course, with Boston, it seems like Fenway's not going anywhere because they have invested a ton of money, multi-billion-dollar project in the Fenway Corners, which will be areas in and around Fenway that they are putting up for the stadium and for kind of the vibe in the area to make more money off of those games. And then you have Wrigley Field with Wrigleyville, all the extensive area surrounding that. And then you do have Lambeau Field. So Lambeau Field, the frozen tundra, what is my expectation in the future? There are a few funny renderings of a potential new Green Bay Packers stadium. I'm going to assume, just based off of the way the renderings look, those were probably made with some AI text-to-image type application. Very impressive, honestly, if that is how they were made, because normally the text-to-image stuff comes out really bad, but there are just a few different things. The question is, I've heard from a few Packers fans, they're pissed off, the weather, it's freezing. That is kind of their identity. You know, it is kind of interesting that Aaron Rodgers played his entire career there, all of his prime years. The last 2 months, he's basically playing in the freezing cold. And I remember a few games of Aaron Rodgers' playoff career when the cold absolutely affected. It's not so much the snow with Green Bay when you get into January, although that can affect it. They have just crazy cold weather where it's like -10, -20, and it's almost impossible to throw the football if it is that cold. That's not even including the wind chill. I mean, the wind chill gets 25, 30 below. Would the Packers consider something? I don't think they would ever replace Lambeau Field, but could we see them doing some type of addition to Lambeau Field to where maybe it's a similar model to what the Buffalo Bills are doing? Now, obviously, all of us NFL fans sitting back, you know, probably 95 to 99% of us never been to Lambeau Field. We're going to say, they should not change this. It's ridiculous. Keep it the same. It's, you know, one of the best stadiums in the NFL. But the people that do go there, I'm sure some of them are not too happy that it does get this cold. I mean, it's almost unwatchable. You go, it's -20 degrees out. That is just brutal. We saw Minnesota go through something where they were waiting for their new super stadium to be built, US Bank Stadium. They had to play at the University of Minnesota Stadium for 2 years, and they had that playoff game against the Seahawks. What was the final score? 7-6 when Blair Walsh missed like a 20-yard field goal. But it was like -30, and it's like, yeah, no wonder Minnesota has a dome. You can barely play in these conditions. So will the Packers ever leave Lambeau Field? This was a story earlier this year. Are there reasons for the Packers to leave Lambeau? They're saying, oh, the stadium is aged, but not anytime soon. They would not leave it. I mean, they invested like around $200 or $300 million in a renovation just back of, 2013, 2014. They're not going to leave Lambeau. I don't think that's an option just based on the location, the history, right within a neighborhood. It is so unique. They're not going to want to ruin it. Also, you do have the whole component of, there's something like a waiting list where the season tickets have been sold out for like the next 50. I guess that wouldn't matter. They could just carry it over if they did get a new stadium at some point. The Packers are the only nonprofit community-owned professional sports team. There will be the need to provide a highly compelling reason to justify such a decision. It's hard to imagine what the reason could be. Yeah, I'm not really seeing a reason outside of them not renovating it over the next 20 or 30 years and it just getting really old to the point where they need a new stadium. We're almost in uncharted territories with something like Lambeau. It's the exact same thing with Fenway. I can't get a gauge on when they're actually going to leave. What I can say is we have technology to where you can really warm up Lambeau, but it's going to change the stadium. Actually, I'm not even sure they could do it at Lambeau because it's not 100% the same in terms of the roof going all the way around because they added that renovation in the south end zone. That's elevated because it is an extra upper deck that doesn't span anywhere else. So even if you wanted to put some type of a awning or a roof on Lambeau to try and keep the heat in, it would be very, very hard to do just based on the fact that it's not level. Normally when you see those awnings or like the overhangs with the soccer stadiums in Europe and what the Bills are doing, it's, fully the same height going all the way around, which makes it a lot easier to put on. That would basically be impossible unless they somehow, I'm not sure that's possible. So quite honestly, the next big time renovation to Lambeau might be replacing the bleachers. And it depends what color they go with, but if they went with like a green normal seat, it would completely change the entire stadium. I guess you could say it would modernize it, and that might be what they decide to end up doing. The other big news we had was earlier this month, or I guess last month now, mid-July, it came out that the Kansas City Chiefs, this is kind of the other, I would say, legendary stadium, or kind of grandfather to be a legendary stadium. The Chiefs possibly planning a huge renovation to stay at Arrowhead for the next 25 years or around there. The thought process with the Chiefs is once the Royals, who play right next to them, once they move out, that's going to give the Chiefs a lot more room. They can put in whatever they want, whether it's a retractable roof to try and draw the Super Bowl, whether it's just a huge upscale renovation to modernize the entire stadium. That stadium was built in 1973, but they really haven't gone through a crazy renovation. That's why it's so, I'm shocked that you want to talk about a good investment. My goodness, Arrowhead Stadium. You can kind of argue it's in a bad spot, but that really doesn't matter. That's actually a positive when it comes to fans going to those games. They're going to sell out no matter what. Now, I would agree when you're talking about the Royals being located not downtown, that is probably a disadvantage for them. The reason is because there's so many games when you're talking about MLB versus NFL. NFL, they're going to sell out no matter what. There's a limited amount. There's a massive demand. There's a little supply. It's the exact opposite with MLB. So it makes sense that the Royals would be moving downtown. The location just is really bad. They've had bad attendance the past few years. They've also been a terrible team. But still, once the Royals move, we could get Arrowhead, which I would consider to be a legendary stadium, getting a massive renovation. Whether or not they do put in a retractable roof, I don't know. With Mahomes there right now, you think they would be incentivized to do something like that, but that's going to be way down the line. You're talking about 2028, 2029. Well, I don't know. Maybe earlier. It just depends what type of renovation they get. Maybe in a few years they'll do it. But getting back to Lambeau Field, I don't see them doing any crazy renovation outside of maybe trying to improve the heating system within the stadium, just because I know this day and age people are getting more and more angry. The other thing I was wondering, the Packers have had so much success recently with Rodgers and Favre. Now that, maybe Jordan Love's not it, maybe they struggle these next few years, that's probably only going to heighten up the issue with Lambeau Field. And let's just say, imagine the Packers are 3-11. It's week 15. It's the middle of December. It's 5 degrees. We're going to be seeing a lot of empty seats. I know they always sell out. They're sold out until 2060, whatever. we're going to be seeing a lot of empty seats at Lambeau Field. That's not going to be a good look. So I do think Lambeau Field has also been able to survive in part because of the success the Packers have had there. There's, they've experienced, it's kind of like the Chiefs as well with Arrowhead. You experience good times. You love the stadium. The stadium experiences a bunch of playoff games. It develops its own almost personality type. But we will see what they end up doing. I think the other obvious upgrades you would consider with Lambeau, if they were to go through another wide-scale renovation, maybe in like 2030 or 2035, you would look at them possibly putting in some standing room areas, maybe in and around where the press boxes, the suites are, redoing that entire thing. You could even add another almost story on top of that if they wanted to. And then, of course, they could add more seating on top of the other end zone if they would want to do that. But I highly doubt with where the NFL is currently with attendance. Honestly, they've already sold out everything, so maybe they could just say we want more money and we're expanding the seating, and it would be like a cash cow for them because they've got a massive waiting list as well. But the most obvious thing, if they were to plan like another big-time renovation, would be adding upper deck seats to the other end zone, and then also redoing the entire like press box area above the big lower bowl. They've got a giant lower bowl, very similar to what Michigan Stadium has and what Notre Dame has. It's just a giant lower bowl of seats. It's kind of the old design, and then they've expanded on top of that to try and modernize it. But that's what I would say if they were to go through a big renovation. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.